You'd think lawmakers would focus on important issues like crime, safety, and public welfare. Instead, throughout American history, they've spent countless hours crafting laws about ice cream transportation, elephant parking regulations, and the proper way to sleep near refrigerators. These aren't ancient laws that got forgotten. These are active statutes that can still get you arrested, fined, or worse. Prepare to lose faith in the legislative process. 1. In Alabama, it's illegal to carry an ice cream cone in your back pocket on Sundays. This law was created because horse thieves used to lure horses away by putting treats in their back pockets. But apparently, lawmakers were very specific about both the day of the week and the type of frozen dessert involved in equine theft. Modern Alabamians have learned to carry their Sunday ice cream in front pockets, purses, or just eat it immediately like civilized people, though the law remains ready to prosecute anyone who attempts contemporary horse theft via strategic dessert placement. 2. In Alaska, it's illegal to wake a sleeping bear to take a photograph with it. This law exists because apparently enough tourists thought that bothering hibernating bears for social media content was worth risking death, and lawmakers had to specifically prohibit people from poking dangerous wildlife for photo opportunities. The law doesn't address what happens if the bear wakes up naturally and wants to take a selfie, but most Alaskans prefer to photograph bears from distances that don't require waking anything up or running for their lives. 3. In Arizona, donkeys cannot sleep in bathtubs within city limits. This highly specific law originated in 1924 when a local merchant's donkey fell asleep in a bathtub that was later swept away by a flash flood, requiring a costly rescue operation that tied up city resources for an entire day. The law remains on the books to prevent future incidents involving sleepy donkeys, bathtub transportation, and expensive animal rescue operations, though modern donkey owners have largely switched to shower stalls and regular beds for their livestock sleeping arrangements. 4. In Arkansas, it's illegal to honk your car horn at a sandwich shop after 9 p.m. This oddly specific noise ordinance, was created after a late-night sandwich emergency in Little Rock, led to a horn-honking incident that woke an entire neighborhood and resulted in 17 noise complaints. The law specifically targets sandwich establishments rather than other restaurants, apparently because lawmakers believed that sandwich-related horn honking was a uniquely problematic form of noise pollution that required dedicated legislation rather than general noise control measures. 5. In California, it's illegal to hunt whales from your car, which is particularly puzzling since California whales live in the ocean, and cars don't typically function underwater. This law was created as part of a broader anti-whaling statute, but the specific prohibition against car-based whale hunting suggests that lawmakers were covering all their bases against creative whale hunting methods. Modern Californians who want to hunt whales must use boats like everyone else, though the law doesn't explain how someone would even attempt automotive whale hunting, or why this needed specific legal prohibition. 6. In Colorado, it's illegal to loan your vacuum cleaner to your next-door neighbor on Sundays. This law originated from a 1920s neighborhood dispute in Denver, where Sunday vacuum borrowing led to property damage, relationship deterioration, and a civil court case that lasted 3 months. The law specifically targets next-door neighbors rather than other neighbors, and only applies to Sundays rather than other days, creating a legal framework where vacuum lending is acceptable Monday through Saturday and permissible on Sundays if you live 2 houses away. 7. In Connecticut, it's illegal to cross the street while walking on your hands. This law was created after a local circus performer caused traffic disruptions by hand-walking across busy intersections as part of a promotional stunt that resulted in multiple near accidents and 1 actual fender bender. The law specifically prohibits hand-walking rather than other unusual pedestrian methods, leaving open legal questions about crossing streets while doing cartwheels, somersaults, or other acrobatic transportation methods that lawmakers apparently didn't consider equally dangerous. 8. In Delaware, it's illegal to sell dog hair, which creates a surprisingly specific prohibition against a business model that apparently seemed viable enough to require legal intervention. The law originated from health concerns about unregulated dog grooming businesses selling pet hair for various commercial purposes. But modern enforcement is complicated by questions about what constitutes selling versus giving away dog hair, and whether the law applies to hair from dogs versus hair that belongs to dogs. 9. In Florida, it's illegal to tie your elephant to a parking meter unless you feed the meter the same as you would for a vehicle. This law acknowledges that elephant parking is legal, but must be paid for at standard vehicle rates, creating a legal framework where elephant owners can park their pets downtown, but must budget for parking fees based on elephant duration rather than elephant size. The law doesn't specify whether elephants count as compact or full-size vehicles for parking fee purposes, leaving enforcement officers to make judgment calls about elephant parking classifications. 10. In Georgia, it's illegal to carry an ice cream cone in your back pocket on any day of the week, making Georgia stricter than Alabama's Sunday-only ice cream pocket prohibition. This comprehensive ice cream pocket ban was created to prevent horse theft, but has evolved into a year-round frozen dessert transportation regulation that affects law-abiding citizens who prefer back pocket ice cream storage. Modern Georgians have adapted by using front pockets, purses, and hands for ice cream transportation, though the law remains ready to prosecute anyone who attempts traditional back pocket ice cream carrying methods. 11. In Hawaii, it's illegal to place coins in your ears, which creates a specific prohibition against using body parts as coin storage, rather than addressing broader concerns about financial security or hearing safety. This law originated from health concerns about ear infections caused by dirty money. But enforcement is complicated by questions about whether the law applies to all coins or just certain denominations, and whether ear-adjacent coin placement violates the spirit, if not the letter of the law. 12. In Idaho, it's illegal to fish from a camel's back, creating a transportation-specific fishing prohibition that suggests lawmakers were concerned about camel-based fishing operations. This law was created when traveling circuses with camels led to creative fishing attempts that disrupted local fishing areas and confused wildlife. But modern enforcement is rare due to the limited availability of fishing camels in Idaho's contemporary recreational fishing scene. 13. In Illinois, it's illegal to speak English in the state legislature. Only American is permitted. This linguistic distinction was created during a period of nationalist fervor when lawmakers wanted to emphasize American linguistic independence from British English. But practical enforcement is complicated by the difficulty of distinguishing between English and American when spoken aloud. Modern legislators navigate this requirement by using American spellings in written materials, while speaking in whatever language sounds most American to their constituents. 14. In Indiana, it's illegal to catch fish with your bare hands, creating an equipment-specific fishing regulation that prohibits the most basic form of fish catching while permitting virtually every other fishing method. This law was created to prevent overfishing by people who were particularly skilled at hand fishing. But modern enforcement focuses on ensuring that all fishing involves appropriate tools rather than monitoring the specific hand-to-fish contact methods that recreational fishers prefer. 15. In Iowa, it's illegal for horses to eat fire hydrants, which creates a diet-specific regulation for equines while ignoring similar dietary restrictions for other large animals. This law was created after several incidents where horses damaged fire hydrants by licking or biting them. But enforcement is complicated by questions about whether the law applies to attempted fire hydrant consumption versus successful fire hydrant eating, and what constitutes horse-initiated fire hydrant contact. 16. In Kansas, it's illegal to hunt whales, which is particularly notable since Kansas is a landlocked state with no ocean access and therefore no whales to hunt. This law was created as part of a comprehensive wildlife protection statute that included copy-paste language from coastal states, but Kansas lawmakers apparently decided to keep the whale hunting prohibition rather than editing their wildlife laws for geographic accuracy. 17. In Kentucky, it's illegal to carry ice cream in your back pocket, making Kentucky the third state with ice cream pocket regulations, but without the day-of-week specificity found in Alabama and Georgia's versions. This general ice cream pocket prohibition was created to prevent horse theft, but has become a year-round frozen dessert transportation regulation that affects citizens who prefer back pocket ice cream storage for convenience and hands-free ice cream transportation. 18. In Louisiana, it's illegal to gargle in public, creating a personal hygiene regulation that prohibits a specific throat cleaning activity while permitting other potentially disruptive personal care activities. This law originated from complaints about public gargling disturbing others, but enforcement is complicated by questions about what constitutes public versus private gargling and whether the law applies to accidental gargling sounds made during normal drinking activities. 19. In Maine, it's illegal to step out of a plane while it's in flight, which creates a safety regulation that prohibits something that would be physically fatal anyway, and therefore rarely requires legal enforcement. This law was created for insurance and liability purposes rather than safety concerns, since anyone violating this law would face more immediate consequences than legal prosecution. But Maine lawmakers apparently felt that mid-flight plane departure needed specific legal prohibition rather than relying on natural consequences. 20. In Maryland, it's illegal to take a lion to the movies, creating entertainment-specific regulations for large carnivore transportation while ignoring similar restrictions on other potentially disruptive movie theater animals. This law originated from circus-related incidents where exotic animals disrupted movie showings, but modern enforcement is rare due to the limited availability of movie-going lions and improved understanding of appropriate cinema etiquette for large predators. 21. In Massachusetts, it's illegal to go to bed without first taking a bath, creating personal hygiene requirements that turn bedtime routines into legal obligations rather than personal preferences. This law was created during a public health campaign to reduce disease transmission, but enforcement is practically impossible since it would require bedroom monitoring by hygiene enforcement officers, leaving most Massachusetts residents to self-regulate their pre-sleep bathing compliance. 22. In Michigan, it's illegal to chain an alligator to a fire hydrant, creating specific restrictions on alligator restraint methods while ignoring broader questions about alligator ownership and public safety. This law originated from carnival-related incidents where exotic animals were improperly secured in public areas, but modern enforcement focuses on ensuring that all alligator restraint systems avoid fire hydrant interference rather than monitoring broader alligator transportation and security protocols. 23. In Minnesota, it's illegal to cross state lines with a duck on your head, creating interstate transportation regulations for waterfowl hat usage while ignoring intrastate duck head transportation. This law was created to prevent agricultural smuggling disguised as unusual fashion choices, but enforcement is complicated by questions about what constitutes intentional versus accidental duck head placement and whether the law applies to other waterfowl species used as unconventional headwear. 24. In Mississippi, it's illegal to teach others what polygamy is, creating educational restrictions on marriage-related information, while permitting other potentially controversial educational topics. This law was created during moral reform movements to limit polygamy awareness. But modern enforcement is complicated by questions about what constitutes teaching versus discussing polygamy, and whether the law applies to historical education, religious studies, or casual conversation about alternative marriage structures. 25. In Missouri, it's illegal to drive with an uncaged bear in your vehicle, creating transportation safety regulations that acknowledge bear transportation while requiring proper containment methods. This law originated from circus transportation incidents where inadequately secured bears created public safety hazards, but modern enforcement focuses on ensuring that all vehicular bear transportation meets cage safety standards rather than prohibiting bear transportation entirely. 26. In Montana, it's illegal for married women to go fishing alone on Sundays, creating gender-specific and marital status-specific recreational restrictions that target a very particular demographic of recreational fishers. This law was created during periods when women's recreational activities were heavily regulated, but modern enforcement is non-existent since it violates numerous constitutional principles while targeting an activity that poses no public safety risks. 27. In Nebraska, it's illegal for a mother to give her daughter a perm without a state license, creating professional regulation for family hair care while ignoring similar restrictions on other family grooming activities. This law was created to protect professional beauticians from family competition, but enforcement is complicated by questions about what constitutes professional versus amateur hair perming and whether the law applies to other family hairstyling activities. 28. In Nevada, it's illegal to drive a camel on the highway, creating transportation-specific regulations for desert animals while permitting other unusual vehicle alternatives. This law was created when camels were briefly imported for transportation experiments, but modern enforcement is rare due to the limited availability of highway-traveling camels and improved understanding of appropriate highway vehicle classifications. 29. In New Hampshire, it's illegal to sell clothes on Sunday unless you have a license to sell clothes on Sunday, creating day-specific commercial regulations that require special permission for weekend retail activities. This law originated from religious observance requirements, but has evolved into a licensing system where Sunday clothes sales require additional permits beyond normal retail licenses, creating bureaucratic complications for weekend shopping opportunities. 30. In New Jersey, it's illegal to wear a bulletproof vest while committing a murder, creating fashion restrictions for criminal activity while ignoring broader concerns about murder prevention. This law was created to enhance criminal penalties rather than prevent crime, since people planning murders rarely consult fashion regulations before committing felonies. But New Jersey lawmakers apparently felt that protective clothing during violent crimes deserves specific legal attention. 31. In New Mexico, it's illegal for idiots to vote, which creates voting restrictions based on intelligence assessments while raising questions about who determines voter intelligence and what qualifies as sufficient mental capacity for political participation. This law was created during periods when voting rights were heavily restricted, but modern enforcement is impossible since it violates constitutional voting rights while requiring intelligence testing that no longer exists. 32. In New York, it's illegal to flirt in public, creating social interaction regulations that prohibit romantic communication while permitting other forms of public conversation. This law originated from moral reform movements targeting public behavior, but enforcement is practically impossible since it would require monitoring private conversations for romantic content and making legal distinctions between flirting and normal social interaction. 33. In North Carolina, it's illegal to use elephants to plow cotton fields, creating agricultural restrictions for specific animal labor while permitting other unusual farming methods. This law was created when circuses occasionally lent elephants for agricultural work, but modern enforcement is rare due to the limited availability of agricultural elephants and improved understanding of appropriate farm animal classifications. 34. In North Dakota, it's illegal to lie down and fall asleep with your shoes on, creating footwear-specific sleeping regulations that turn bedtime routines into legal requirements. This law originated from fire safety concerns about people sleeping in work boots, but enforcement is practically impossible since it would require bedroom monitoring by shoe enforcement officers while people are sleeping. 35. In Ohio, it's illegal to get a fish drunk, creating substance abuse regulations for aquatic animals while ignoring broader concerns about animal welfare and alcohol accessibility. This law was created to prevent animal cruelty disguised as entertainment, but enforcement is complicated by questions about what constitutes fish intoxication and whether the law applies to accidental alcohol exposure versus intentional fish drinking. 36. In Oklahoma, it's illegal to hunt whales, which is notable since Oklahoma is landlocked and has no whales to hunt, making this prohibition geographically impossible to violate. This law was created as part of comprehensive wildlife protection that included copy-paste language from coastal states, but Oklahoma lawmakers kept the whale hunting prohibition rather than editing their hunting regulations for geographic accuracy. 37. In Oregon, it's illegal to pump your own gas, creating fuel service regulations that require professional gas station attendants while prohibiting self-service fueling. This law was created for safety and employment reasons, but Oregon remains one of the few states where self-service gas stations are illegal, creating unique fueling experiences for visitors who are accustomed to pumping their own gas. 38. In Pennsylvania, it's illegal to sleep on top of a refrigerator outdoors, creating location-specific and appliance-specific sleeping regulations that target a very particular form of outdoor rest. This law originated from vagrancy concerns during economic hardships when people slept in unusual outdoor locations, but modern enforcement focuses on ensuring that refrigerator-top sleeping occurs indoors rather than prohibiting appliance-based sleeping entirely. 39. In Rhode Island, it's illegal to bite off someone else's leg, creating assault regulations for specific body part consumption while ignoring other forms of cannibalistic violence. This law was created during violent periods when unusual assault methods required specific legal prohibition, but modern enforcement focuses on general assault charges rather than monitoring leg biting specifically. 40. In South Carolina, it's illegal for a man over 16 to seduce an unmarried woman by falsely promising to marry her, creating age-specific and gender-specific romance fraud regulations while ignoring similar deception by other demographics. This law was created to protect women from marriage fraud, but modern enforcement is complicated by questions about what constitutes false promises versus changed circumstances in romantic relationships. 41. In South Dakota, it's illegal to fall asleep in a cheese factory, creating location-specific sleeping regulations that target dairy production facilities while permitting sleep in other food processing locations. This law originated from worker safety concerns about people sleeping near dangerous cheese-making equipment, but modern enforcement focuses on general workplace safety rather than monitoring cheese factory sleep specifically. 42. In Tennessee, it's illegal to share your Netflix password, creating entertainment-specific intellectual property regulations that target streaming service sharing while ignoring other forms of digital content sharing. This law was created to protect streaming service revenue, but enforcement is complicated by questions about what constitutes sharing versus family use and whether the law applies to other streaming platforms. 43. In Texas, it's illegal to milk another person's cow, creating property-specific agricultural regulations that protect dairy rights while ignoring broader concerns about livestock theft. This law was created during periods when cow stealing was common, but modern enforcement focuses on general theft charges rather than monitoring unauthorized milking specifically. 44. In Utah, it's illegal to cause a catastrophe, which creates emergency-specific legal restrictions that prohibit causing disasters while raising questions about what constitutes catastrophic behavior and whether accidental catastrophes violate this law. This law was created as a general emergency statute, but enforcement is complicated by determining what qualifies as catastrophe-causing versus normal accident-causing behavior. 45. And finally, in Vermont, it's illegal for women to wear false teeth without written permission from their husbands, creating gender-specific and marital status-specific dental regulations that require spousal approval for oral health care. This law was created during periods when women's medical decisions required male permission, but modern enforcement is impossible since it violates numerous constitutional rights while targeting medical care that improves quality of life. These laws prove that somewhere in America's past, every single one of these bizarre situations actually happened. And instead of just shaking their heads and moving on, lawmakers decided to make them permanently illegal. The most disturbing part? These laws are still enforceable today. So maybe keep that ice cream in your front pocket, leave the whales alone, and definitely don't try to milk anyone else's cow. Subscribe for more proof that common sense isn't actually common in American legislation.